Hi, I'm Adrienne Rogers, Artistic Director for Product Club, and I'm going to show you a mannequin that's going to illustrate the difference between highlights in foil and balayage. On one side of the mannequin, I did a lot of horizontal baby lights, and on the other side, we surface painted from roots to ends with balayage. I hope this is helpful and useful when deciding on which technique works best for what you're looking for. So here's my mannequin. I kept this very simple, and every movement that I did, be it a foil or balayage, I just went horizontally up the head to keep it as uncomplicated as possible so that I could show you the differentials of what happens when you do that. On this side, I did straight highlighting. So I did little baby lights going all the way up the side. And if you look at this, you can see that the placement and the brightness is somewhat stronger here. You get really strong linear placements when you put hair in a foil and paint it all the way from the top to the bottom. But as it moves through the hair strand, you lose the impact on the bottom. You get more through the round of the head and less in open space. So when you're doing baby lights, it kind of creates a whole shift in color, but you don't get any emphasis through the ends with the lack of the round of the head. The round of the head creates light reflection right off that point, so you're really able to see everything. But as you get through the bottom, it just looks a lot more diffused. Now on the other side, I did balayage. I painted the hair from the base to the ends, again using a very simple horizontal section going all the way up. I did surface painting, and then I grabbed all of the ends and applied that through the hair strand. So you can see, even though I went all the way to the top with the balayage, it's still softer in here because of the application. Then as I get through the ends, you get more brightness through the ends because I'm working the hair color through. I'm going to show you what I mean. This is the same mannequin that I used to do the after, so we'll compare those together when we get to that point. I'm going to use my gloves, and I always like to keep a wet towel near me so that I can wipe my hands off in between sections. And when I did this, I used balayage barrier film through each single movement. So we'll do that again. I'm just going to work on the sides because this is not a complicated wrap. I just went straight up, so we're going to keep it simple so that I can just give you a really clean understanding of what's happening here. So I'm going to work horizontally up the side of the head to keep it simple, and I'm just going to take a nice section out here. When I did the mannequin, I really didn't leave any hair out, but when you surface paint, the underneath of the hair is not affected. So you have a built-in low light happening in each section. So I'm gonna hold this hair, and I'm gonna hold it low into gravity so that I can see what's happening. And then I'm gonna kind of pull it out a little further so that I can get up closer to the root. I've mixed my balayage lightener, and I'm loading up my brush, and I am gonna put it on my hand here so that I can get the proper amount on my brush. And I'm gonna come in, and I'm working sideways. You want the brush, the bristles to be parallel with the hair strand. So you don't want to be up or down, definitely not in. You want to kind of just go right on top of the hair. I always do a couple little movements with my brush to see how my density is, whether I have enough product on my brush. It gives you a good sense of what's happening. Then as you can see, I moved my hand up a little bit on the hair strand just to get more control. I'm going to kind of go on the top, and now I'm going to come up and just going all the way up to the top, surface painting. You can come up against it or just come down. You just want to make sure to use a very delicate touch. The point of doing balayage like this is that because there's less product up here, it's going to process less. So you get a softer transition into the hair strand. So as you get close to the scalp, you want to make sure that that first little bit is very, very sheer so that it's not too strong. But then as you get in, like right about in that zone, you want that application to be stronger. When you see a lot of opacity on the hair and it's coating the hair, then you kind of know that you're on the right track and that you have the right amount of product on there coming through. So now I've surface painted here, so if I lift this, you can see that there's nothing coming underneath there, which is why I actually did it without any hair in between, so that it could compare to the baby lights more effectively. As I move through the hair strand, I'm sliding my hands down, but I'm not releasing the tension. Do not release the tension of the hair. And as you move down, you want to make sure that you're saturating the hair evenly on the top. Now at a certain point, especially with a mannequin, the density level of the hair becomes much less. So surface painting all the way through to the ends is difficult. And I also think that you lose a little bit of the impact. So I come through here and I'm going to place this on my hand and I'm going to make sure that I have good saturation in here. Painting this. I'm going to look underneath at the other side, come through, and then you want to make sure that you blend this out. Now if you have a little nugget or something, you can just use the tip of your comb to buff that out. Don't think too hard about it, just make sure that there's no little nuggets there. And then come through and you can drop this down. I like to keep my towel around because I then like to wipe my hand off, and I'm going to use the balayage film. When I'm looking for a lot of lightness, it's incredibly important to insulate the hair. So when I did the mannequin, every single hair strand that I did, I put film on. I like to be a little generous, especially when I start this, because balayage film really adheres nicely to itself, but not so great to nothing. So I'm going to kind of clip this in for now. And I'm going to take my next section down. So I want to make sure it's thin enough that it's not too blocky, but thick enough that I have the underside of the hair after surface painting to maintain some of the depth. Now if you start to get little bits of lightener through the upper section, you just comb that out. Don't overthink it. You can just kind of tap that off. You want to make sure to go through the strand with a flat brush so that you don't push the lightener through that top section, because I'm only surface painting here. Now that I have that all in, I'm going to kind of get a little more serious about my levels of saturation below the base of it, below right where it meets the part. The less solution that you have on there, the less the hair will process. So if you have a nice coating on there, it's going to lift more because the exterior will dry and it will stay damp on the interior. I do like to skim across the front here, make sure that that's nice and smooth. If you see hair through the solution, it's not going to lighten enough. So you want to make sure it's nice and thick there. And then when you come underneath, it's a nice blend. Definitely want to check that underneath just to make sure that there's no surprises. So now I've dropped that section down again, and then with my cleaner comb coming through, just tap that out. When you fold it a little bit like that, you actually build a little bit of cushion for the next section to pop over, which helps to protect the top of this. So now I'm going to grab the other mannequin and we're going to look at it and talk about the way that the balayage works here. All of these were horizontal sections. And you can see, especially at this top, you can see that softness there, where it doesn't start all the way to scalp, even though I painted up very high. That lack of density there allows that to just segue softly in. Then as we get through those ends, you can see how much brightness exists here. if you have someone whose hair does not lift easily, sometimes balayage is a bad choice, because if you don't lift the hair enough, you're going to have unwanted warmth, which is why I sometimes like to choose foils. Because with foils, you can completely control that as you have much thinner sections and that processes evenly. Let's do that. So we've completed a few of these horizontal movements where we surface painted the balayage and then pulled it through on the ends. And now I'm going to switch to the other side, and I'm going to give you the baby light version of this. And we'll talk about the differences and how that works. I'm very careful about my choices when I am deciding how I want to do things. And I find that I do an awful lot of combination work where I foil and balayage, because when you combine those two effects, you get beautiful results. But when you are making sure that you get that brightness all the way to the scalp, if you use regular foiling, you're really pretty guaranteed to get a nice strong effect. Because this hair is so thin that you are able to see through the hair strand, you're really going to saturate that hair. That hair is going to get lightener all the way around it. So sometimes when you balayage and you're surface painting, it's almost like a circle and just that top half is painted. In this instance, the entire hair strand will be saturated all the way around. It's a slightly less natural look, but you really have a lot of control. The control to be sure that you lift the hair enough, that you have enough brightness happening, and it's even all the way through. You really don't have to try too hard to saturate because the hair is already so thin that the lightener is really working its way through there. When I really want to have a lot of action happening at the top, that's when I'm really leaning toward foils, because balayage has the softness that you're looking for on the top and then more intensity toward the end, but you don't get that same effect. All of these techniques are so important to know so that you have options to create what you're looking to create. And when you understand the differences between what does what, you're going to be very quickly able to make these decisions and then not regret your choice. The less hair that you leave in between the sections, the lighter the hair will be, but you don't get that concentration through the ends. You know, if you think about it, there's so much more density here than here. So if I'm just weaving this hair out, there's no way we're gonna see it in the same way down here as the density level at the top. And that's an important thing to consider, because if you don't have enough lightness through the ends, then someone that thinks that they should be blonde in that visit is going to be disappointed. So you wanna make sure to either use end lights in the hair, you know, little peekaboo foils on the ends, however you want to address it, balayage through the ends. If you don't do that, you're not going to get that strong through the ends look. And that's a very important distinction. So each of these techniques have different merits, but here we are, we just did the 3 foils. Now you can see all this hair was not done, but all of this is completely encapsulated and lightening. Let's get the foil mannequin and I can show you. So again, you can see how bright and clean that is here. It's a strong distinction between the uncolored hair and the colored hair, whereas this has a softer, more melted appearance without any glazing. So you can glaze this and give it that, but you get it automatically with the balayage. Then you can also see it's a little bit stripy. So if you are unable to kind of control yourself and keep a nice little delicate weave, you may end up with a more linear look. If your client comes in and says, no lines, you may want to consider painting balayage from base to the ends like we did on the other side. But you want to keep in mind what they're looking for in the outcome and whether or not you can get that lift out of that hair. Also, here we are, it's a little bit sandier looking, right? Because the interspersed dark hair through the ends lend to a more kind of a matte look, where on this side, when you really brighten up those ends through full saturation on the bottom, you end up with a much brighter finish. So depending on what you're looking for, Foils can be your friend for sure, and balayage is a great tool to have at your fingertips in order to get you where you need to be.